So when I moved to Grand Rapids, I think people didn't know what to do with me. So I had challenges there. I had, some bullies, but I don't know, I got through it. It was challenging, but I think the message is to just keep being yourself no matter what gets you down.
My story was a little bit different. So I started in Duluth, rural area, Lakewood Township. I was different as a little kid, right? And I think the other kids picked up on it very quickly. And the school administration and a lot of people in the community were not very supportive. As a little kid, I remember the bus company letting them stop one of the buses on top of the hill every day after school and yell things to me as I walked up the driveway. It wasn't my bus, but it was another bus from the area, and it just continued to progress, and eventually it involved some of the administration, the staff, the students, which resulted in me moving to school in Two Harbors. Two Harbors was a lot more supportive, as much as that may sound crazy, right? But they kind of let me be myself. I ended up connecting with an amazing school administrator who I think changed my life. I talked a little bit about her to some students, but coming to a smaller community was actually a significant move and really kind of improved the experience overall. I don't know that I would have had access to the opportunities that I had. That really kind of changed where I ended up going from a career perspective if I wouldn't have been here.
And I think for a lot of queer people, finding your community is definitely a big thing. So how did you find your community?
I think I was just being myself, and I naturally gravitated towards other people who were being themselves. Something that I shared with the students earlier is that somebody once told me to just be your authentic self, and it will allow others around you to be your authentic self. So I think just in doing that, I found my group, and they found me, and we just supported each other, and I think I was successful because of that.
It took me a little while to find my community, right? I tried to make friends. I got involved in a lot of different programs. I got involved with the Police Explorers, as much as that sounds interesting, and kind of created my own little community there. Created some friends. One of them actually was one of my harassers back in Duluth, and eventually we became really good friends, and long story. But then as my kind of network grew, a lot of my friends that I had, the small base in this area, started moving to the Twin Cities. Eventually I followed, and my connections, my network continued to grow. I was pretty shy in the beginning. I'm not so shy now, but eventually it began to grow. I would like we talked about being your authentic self, right? Being yourself, putting yourself out there, knowing that not everyone is going to accept you, and being okay with that. Took a lot of work to be comfortable with that, but I continued to make friends, and some really good lifelong friends.
And how has being queer affected your professional life?
I mean, for me, I think being queer is my professional life. Thank you. I have a brand in New York City with my partner called Tanner Fletcher, and we make genderless clothing. We wanted to do that because Tanner and I used to shop in women's departments, or we'd be thrifting and, looking at women's clothing, and it's not all that different from men's, and we'd get people coming in saying, oh, the men's department is over there, kind of like, you belong over here, you belong over here. So, I mean, our clothing isn't a new category. It's not genderless, like anybody can wear it. There's feminine clothes, there's masculine clothes. We just want to remove the label. We just want to say, like, anybody can be themselves. It's more about, we picture our clothes as tools to kind of put in your cupboard and build your personality. That's it.
For me, and that's great that it can be your space, right? But initially for me, growing up here in Minnesota, and if you think about starting a career in the late 90s, early 2000s, it really wasn't accepted, right? And so I remember doing some contract work, some consulting work, and losing those positions pretty quickly once they found out who I was. Eventually that started to change, but then I realized that I also had to be more upfront about who I was during the interview process. At one point, one of my vice presidents tried to set me up with their daughter. One of our good friends was like, well, Diane, I don't know that he necessarily plays for that team, but I'm sure he's really flattered. So I had to be a lot more genuine about who I was, and now I actually incorporate it into my interview process. I drop hints, right? I talk to them about my significant other. We live together. They know, that I'm gay, right? And so there's no surprises. It's not being overly blatant with it, but it's letting them know. And as much as they're interviewing me, I'm interviewing them to make sure it's going to be the right cultural fit for me. With my current employer, they're headquartered in Paris and Boston. I was actually talking to my CEO on the way up here, and he's like, so what exactly are you doing? And I told him that I was coming here to speak at Two Harbors First Pride, and he was ecstatic about it. He's like, I want pictures. He's like, we're going to post this internally. He's like, this is great. And so we actually have an internal Pride committee and a Pride channel, and they dedicate a lot of organizational development around it, which I think is great. So seeing the transformation from the late 90s, early 2000s to where it is today has been a significant change, almost to some extent a culture shock with some of the acceptance in a good way.
I know both of you have accomplished a lot in both your professional and personal lives. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I just shared, about our brand, but on top of what I just shared, we're also doing a wedding collection, which we just launched in March. And it's been amazing to see the type of customers that we're getting, because we of course get a lot of queer people. We have a lot of queer couples coming to us. We love dressing the whole couple. But we also get, straight people as well. We get straight women, we get straight men coming to us. So it's really interesting to see how it's really, people are ignoring the labels, and that's kind of the goal with our brand. And that's what we wanted. So we're just ecstatic to see these people coming to us.
So professionally, what I do is not what I ever thought I was going to do. So growing up, I couldn't decide between some very diverse spaces, right? So I thought computer science. I was super into programming. I was teaching myself how to program when I was 13. It was not cool then. Hopefully it's a little bit more cool now. I can tell you it was not cool then. I was very interested in nursing. My mom told me that was not the right career path because I did not do well with blood, so that was probably not going to happen. And I thought about law enforcement. We talked about me being part of that Explorers group. But she was a cop, and she told me that as much as she thought I would be a good police officer and they probably needed someone like me, it was probably not going to be safe. Of course, Mom is right. Mom is always right. So just remember, Mom is right. And so I went down the computer science path, and then eventually landed in a startup by the name of Ingenix under United Healthcare, and later became Optum. So I spent 9 years there really kind of growing the healthcare payment accuracy space. We can talk about where they are now. They were not there when I left. And then helped a number of other health plans build out really payment accuracy spaces, trying to help keep healthcare attainable and affordable, but really focus on the AI space, right? And so of course now AI is a big buzzword. Everyone is super interested in it. But if I told you I was doing it in the early 2000s, would you believe me? It's not quite what it is today, right? It's obviously morphed and grown, and now we're really moving at the speed of technology. So every year it's bigger, better, and probably twice as much as it was the year before. And so now I lead customer success and value engineering, really developing the products and solutions for the company based out of Paris, who's super excited that I'm here, Shift Technologies, for all of North America, right? So looking at how do we build out ways to keep healthcare attainable and affordable, being able to keep up with all of the fraud, waste, and abuse that's happening within that space, but then also trying to keep pace with the way AI, as it's continued to grow, is also resulting in more payment accuracy issues. So it's been a fun space, something that I didn't know that was going to exist, but thinking back, I was able to blend all three of those interests, right? That nursing, the law enforcement, and the computer science into a career that didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago.
Jesse, I know your court case is a big thing. I don't think people know about it as much as they probably should. I mean, I didn't even know a whole lot about it before, even though it affects a lot of queer people in schools. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I was talking earlier, I kind of talked about how my experience growing up was not ideal, right? And we could probably say it's way less than ideal. Resulted in me switching school districts, but we tried to get the school district in Duluth to change a lot of different things while I was there. They didn't. We were meeting with their administrators on a regular basis. They decided that they wanted to send me to the alternative learning high school. They thought I was the problem, and at that point they switched, and I went to Two Harbors. We also started pursuing what was happening from a legal perspective, right? It broadly affected everything from elementary school all the way to the end of my sophomore year in high school. Tried to just kind of blend in and disappear when all of that started, and continued to move it forward. And it took about 5 years to get it rectified as we kind of moved it along the way. There was no such thing as male-on-male sexual harassment. It was boys would be boys, right? There was no federal protection under Title IX for the LGBT community. As part of what came out of that, they determined that I was denied equal access to an education because I was gay, and so it transformed that. I had no idea the impact or the magnitude of what came out of that. Early in my career, we hired a new attorney, and we were meeting, and he had just graduated law school probably 2 or 3 years before, and he just said, "Are you the Jesse Montgomery?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Well, my name is Jesse Montgomery, I don't know what you mean." And so then he pulled it up and he turned it around, and he said, "Well, are you this Jesse Montgomery?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me, Jesse Montgomery versus Independent School District 709. He's like, "So I don't know if you know this, but they teach what happened to you in law school." And I was kind of dumbfounded at first. But he's like, "No," he's like, "it was an instrumental case. It's totally transformed, certain federal laws and the protection for the community." And then as I've continued to look at that case, after that, with all things going digital, I can see a lot of the other cases that have referenced my experience to fight for, what's been happening to them. I've had a lot of people ask me, would you change it? Would you do things differently? If it could have happened to somebody else, would you have had it happen to someone else? And hopefully my mom isn't too upset when I say no. Was it devastating? Yeah. Was it difficult for my family? Yes. Did my sisters avoid me like I was the plague? Absolutely. Does anyone want their kid, coming home crying after being pushed down the stairs at school and everything else that went along with it? Probably not. But I had an amazing supportive family system that really helped me pursue this, right? That helped me push this. We were in a community that was a little bit more forward thinking. So as we began to pursue it from a legal perspective, we were able to get it in front of the right, aspects of the legal system, find the right attorney, right? There was really the support process in place for me and my family to be able to move it forward. It also opened up the door for me to meet people along the way that I probably wouldn't have met otherwise, that really helped form my career and where I am today. If it would have been different, those things would not have happened. So as I watch what's happened over the last 20 or 30 years within this space and seeing the broader transformations, as much as our community still faces challenges, it's humbling to say that I got to be part of that, right? And so I didn't even know the magnitude until one day an attorney that I work with turned it around and told me that they teach me in law school. So it's great to be part of that, but it's also great to see everyone here and knowing that we can be open and that we can be celebrating in a park, in Two Harbors, in a small community. When Fletcher and I were talking earlier, I just said, did you ever think, ever, that there would be this type of event in this community? And I think we both agreed that it's not something that we ever envisioned, but it's great to see it happening now.
If there was something you could tell your younger self, what would you tell them?
I would say just keep being yourself, just follow your heart. I mean, it's kind of what I did, but it was very difficult at the time. It's very hard when you're in it to think, I'm just going to keep being myself. So I think I would just kind of double down on keep being yourself. And I mean, we've all been there where I think it's easy to change yourself, or it's easy to try to adapt to your surroundings, and at the end of the day it's just going to be hurtful for you, because it's better for you to just be who you are. So that's what I would tell myself, and that's what I would tell anybody else here who's questioning themselves or looking to know themselves. Just follow your heart and just be yourself.
What would I tell my younger self? So, first, joking, not joking, but I would tell my younger self, buy lots of Tesla and Amazon. Buy it all. No. But it would just be your genuine self. Know that it's going to be difficult. You know, those difficulties, as much as they're difficult now, will really help you move forward. You're going to meet some great people. You know, life is going to be challenging, right? You're going to be scared, right? But just continue to push forward, right? Support those around you, and just be you, right? I mean, I think I think a lot of us in this community have spent so much time being afraid to be ourselves, right? And I would tell myself to be me. I mean, I didn't even get the opportunity to come out to my mom. I got, as part of the whole court case, that's how I came out to my mom. So as much as you can find a way to be you and be your genuine self.
Currently, who is your favorite queer artist and why?
My favorite queer artist right now, I think, is Chapel Roan. Love her. I mean, I would also say Sarah Paulson, kind of an older person that I love. I think both of them are very inspiring right now. Chapel especially is just making waves and kind of changing the way that people look at pop culture. And I think that Tanner and I can kind of tack on to that too from the fashion perspective. So yeah, love Chapel.
So mine, I'm going to go a little old school. It's probably going to be a bit cliche. And, you know, there's a few, right? I mean, they were really pioneers, right? And to some extent, you know, it's been monopolized on as a result. But I probably have two, and that's just because they were so blatant about it in the beginning, right? There was no hiding who they were. They were completely genuine about it. To some extent, probably throwing it in your face, right? And they faced a lot of risk as a result. But it would probably be Elton John and RuPaul, right? And so just continuing to look at how they've evolved the space and continued to push the boundaries and even evolve the way that they approach it, right? I mean, so RuPaul's Drag Race, I'm sure that there's a few of us that have probably watched a couple of episodes, but, you know, even seeing her with the way that she kind of interacts with her contestants, right? At first it was you had to be male, right? In order to be involved in this, you had to be male, right? Then it was, well, you couldn't be transitioning, right? And now you can be transitioning, you can be male, you can be straight, you can be female, right? I mean, I think her contestants now are broad, right? And so just watching even her evolve what she does within this space has been huge, right? I mean, it's not just those around us that have the opportunity to grow, it's ourselves that have the opportunity to grow too, and that just highlights an artist that's been able to do that.
What is your favorite little piece of queer history and why?
I think living in New York, I love visiting Stonewall, where really the gay rights movement started. The whole neighborhood in the West Village is full of gay bars where a lot of history was made, a lot of protests happened, just a lot of boundaries were crossed in a good way for gay history. So we always make a point of visiting those bars, and it's really interesting to see the people around there. It's really a mixed bag. So it feels like we can kind of step into history. So if you get to New York City, visit West Village, Stonewall Inn.
So obviously Stonewall is huge, and that was one I was going to say, right? And I was explaining that one to my mom earlier today, and kind of what happened in June and why there's Pride Month itself. But I'm going to go with my option number 2, and that's what's happening right here today, right? In 10 years, I look forward to coming back to Two Harbors in July over Heritage Days, and maybe the park will have to be a bit different because I'm hoping that we'll outgrow it, but it's the history that's happening right here, right now.
Do you have a favorite queer movie, book, or TV show that you would recommend to other people?
I have to think here. I have a lot of them.
I can list off a few too.
I know. I feel like lately I've been looking towards a lot of like 80s movies, a lot of 80s references, like high school references, high school movies. There's not a lot of like queer history in the 80s, but right now I feel like we're kind of we're taking the 80s and we're kind of like redoing it in a way where it's modern. So that's kind of what Tanner and I are doing with our fashion too. We even look like to the 50s. We watch vintage movies from the 50s, like with Marilyn Monroe, and it's like there's no queer people at all, and we like to reimagine it. So I'm honestly like really inspired by non-queer things so that I can turn them around and make them queer.
Yeah, I think that there's an opportunity to have more focus on queer dominant characters, right? But as we kind of look at what's happening today, I'm a big sci-fi fan, horror fan, right? I loved the original Interview with the Vampire, but for those of you that watch or have access to AMC Plus, and no, they are not paying me to say this, but I love what they've done with the characters in that and how they've really taken the LGBTQ aspect of it and really incorporated that into that series, and they're open about it, right? They're not afraid, there's no shame, they're not hiding it, it's just very open. But I also think that highlights an opportunity to have more of that in our culture. I hope that they continue to, produce more seasons of that, but I think it's the support, but at the same time I think that they've also received support, so it's probably that right now, and I'm hoping that there will be more in the future.
I know my first personal favorite is definitely But I'm a Cheerleader from the 1990s. That movie is hilarious. Fletcher, for your, since you're younger, do you think social media or having the internet around helped you like come into yourself at all?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially right now with our brand, I think having our Instagram it's so necessary for our brand, and I feel like we are able to, put our message out there, and we see a lot of our followers, messaging us and saying, like, thank you for doing this. We see a lot of positive feedback. Even just with our wedding clients, people come in and say, I have no idea where I can find something to wear for my wedding. I said earlier, like, the only place to go for men for their wedding is like Men's Warehouse. Where else do you go? And it's it feels trapped to some of these people because it's very one note and they have a lot more to their personality. And I don't think that any of that would be happening without social media. So I think social media is responsible for a lot of the message spreading. I mean, even here, the Pride page that we created spread the word here, and now we have an amazing turnout. So I think that it's very necessary.
For Jesse, I know there probably wasn't a lot of queer media in the 1990s, but was there any that particularly affected you?
in the 90s, right? And so I grew up with the beginnings of the internet, right? Two Harbors High School and their administrative office got internet when I was here. I actually helped network them, set up their first computers, right? But what that did, because I didn't have anyone to talk to about myself, would leave me at home to my own devices on my dial-up as I listened to the handshake of my modem. For those of you that have never heard that, I apologize. But it would leave me by myself trying to do online exploration, right? And so now with social media, it's much more open, right? Things are much more visible. There's access to a lot more content. It doesn't mean that everyone supports it. I think that it really opens up the doors for the broader community to, to become accessible, right? To find, you might not have someone in your community. You might not have the brand, the organization, the attire for your event in your community, but you can now find it. You can access it, right? And so it opens up that door. I do have some concerns and fears, right? Because it does, in turn, result in people seeing a certain image, right? They now need to be this. They're expected to be that, right? It's taking them away from their genuine selves, right? I still want to encourage people, as much as they're using social media, that's opening up the doors, and they're putting themselves out there to still be their genuine selves. Don't feel like they have to compete against everything else that they see online.
For you, were there any queer media things that helped you?
I think with the dawn of Instagram, a lot of influencers, seeing a lot of influencers. When Tanner and I first met, we followed a lot of other couples on Instagram, which was interesting. It was we didn't really see a lot of other couples our age even. So we kind of connected with other couples online and made friends that way. I think, like Jess said, it's all about visibility, just kind of seeing that, oh, I can be this way, or I can do this, I can, express myself. It's a lot about the self-expression. On the flip side of, not being your authentic self, I think it also helps you be your authentic self because you see that other people are doing it, and it gives you the freedom to kind of explore things that you may not even know existed. So I think that really helped me.
Is there anything you'd like to tell the younger queer people in the audience?
Be yourself. It will get better. It doesn't mean it's going to get easier, right? Use the challenges that you're facing to continue to grow. Don't use it as something to shut you down, right? Use it to propel you forward, right? As much as you have these challenges that you're facing today, they're probably opening up other doors for you. Use them as an opportunity to network, stay connected. Don't let it shut you down, but be your genuine self. Know that you're going to face challenges. It will get a little bit easier. It's not going to be perfect, but it does get better.
I think that I would say, growing up in a small town, it's very easy to kind of, stick to the status quo. It's very easy to kind of be the same as everybody else, or especially if you're different, it's challenging to be different. So I would say, if you feel challenged to be different, go in that direction. If you feel yourself thinking, oh, I need to fit in, or I need to do this because everybody else is doing that, catch yourself and do the exact opposite. It will help you in the long run. I think that's what being yourself is. It's challenging. It's not oh, I just am myself. You really have to notice these things and say, this is how I want to be, so I'm going to do it. And it's challenging, but you can do it.
Do you have either of you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
I thought there was final thoughts, but of course you still need to plug your brand, right? We need your brand, we need your website. You should have brought business cards or flyers. No, I'm kidding. Social media, had your own booth. No. I'm just ecstatic to be here, right? Like I said, in the mid to late 90s, I would have never expected that this was going to be happening, right? This is history in the making for Two Harbors, right? We weren't sure what to expect. right? We weren't sure if we were going to be met with a lot of protests. It's amazing to see that we're not. Thank you for being here. Thank you for asking me to be part of it, right? I mean, I'm flattered, right? I'm just a guy who lives in Arizona now, who grew up here, but it's great to be part of, Pride, established in 2024 for Two Harbors, so thank you.
My final thoughts are, let's see you guys all again next year, and bring your friends, and let's keep this growing. I mean, we're all a community, so everybody kind of find a little something to do, and then it'll help grow it that much more. Lastly, I think we need to thank Kitty and Patty for planning this whole thing. I mean, it wouldn't be happening without them, and it's truly spectacular. It's amazing. And thank you to Marley.
Thank you so much, both of you, for coming. And I think that's the end of our panel.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Round of applause for all three of these folks. Thanks so much for that. Well done. Okay. Hi, I'm Kitty Mayo. How about Two Harbors Pride? Do we want to yell that a couple of times? Yes! Two Harbors Pride! Two Harbors